Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round one of the 939 Corse AROC Touring Car Championship. I am very happy to be back in the commentary box, ready for the second half of the racing for this year. As we have, I believe that is that Rob Whitney and someone else coming out of the pit lane here? No, it is Guy Swarbrick and someone else. That is the information, the detail that you come here for. But it is great to be back talking about some cars going around some racetracks. As you may notice, slight drop in graphical fidelity for tonight's stream. I do apologise for that, and I can confirm that this is a one-week only scenario. Don't worry, we'll be back to full resolution and full frame rate and full fidelity next week. But what a track to kick off the season with. It is Donington Park for this evening racing. The hills, the crests, everything that this track can throw at the drivers. Overtaking zones to watch out for. Then we have Redgate, McLean's, maybe Complex as well, a few particularly brave, but I think the most important will be Roberts as we head towards the end of the lap. And we're back in the Giulietta WTCR, a bit of a favourite of the drivers, and I can see why. Great looking car, handles really nicely by all accounts. I've driven it on a couple of occasions, and it certainly was a nice to drive car. So let's see now these drivers who haven't driven this car in around about 6 to 7, maybe 8 months, I believe. A little while since we've been in the front wheel drive touring cars, so should be some changes, some tweaks to the driving style to get used to once again. At this moment we are about halfway into qualifying, and something that we got a little bit familiar with in the first half of this year's running. It is Will Inglis, as we're on board with him at the moment, running a little bit wide there, but that's not what we were used to though. What we were used to was Will Inglis topping the time chart here, and we can see it's a 1 minute 9.251 at the moment. He leads by about 0.2 down from Matt Daly. Matt Daly with a very impressive effort there to be 0.2 with him as well. We have a few cars actually in the 109s. We have Alan Matthews, Andy Craker and Jack Hodson as well to round up the top 5 so far in this qualifying. Maybe drivers starting to push the limits here as we see a few cars going off here or there now. So that'll be one thing for the drivers to watch out for. I think there might be a little bit more time left in the track and car combo just yet. Let's see if the likes of Matt Daly just can squeeze those potentially 108. Could we see 108? I think we will at some point this weekend. Might not be here in qualifying, but I suspect we could find a 108 somewhere. Drivers, of course, fresh off the heels of the Summer Endurance Championship. Didn't quite get to stream as many of those as I would have liked, but what a championship that turned out to be. The mix of cars really did turn a few things on their heads, having such a spread of cars in terms of how they're set up. Really, you got the 4C, the AC, and the Jude GTAM Zagato thingy. I completely made up the name for that one there, which was, as some people alluded to, was by far and away my personal favourite. So it was interesting to see the different style of cars all running together on track, their strengths and weaknesses showing at certain tracks. Portimao was the last one that I was able to jump in with. 10 minutes ago now in this qualifying session. Looked like Jack Hodson actually got a little bit of air there as he was heading through. We were just heading through the crane of curves, and it looked to be that the front axle looked a little bit unhappy potentially. So Jack Hodson really pushing now. We can look at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. We can see that predicted a 1 minute 9.5 at one point. Currently in the 1 minute 6s, back down to the 1 minute 5s actually. Have we got reverse commentator's curse for this season? Am I manifesting a good lap here from Jack Hodson? We're in the mid 109.5s at this point in time, heading down now towards Roberts. That heavy braking zone for the right-left switch for the dash down the Wheatcroft straight to start another lap now. Just kissing the curbs here, potentially a little bit too much, and it is too much on the exit of Roberts there. Sorry, Jack Hodson. I said it might be reverse commentator's curse. It was not. It was just the regular commentator's curse as it turned out. But biting a little bit too much of the cherry there, taking a bit too much curve. The car goes up onto 2 wheels. I'm sure there'll be a fantastic shot of that in someone's replay files. We have plenty of images actually in the database, if you will, of Giulietta WTCRs up at a 45-degree angle. Not the optimum handling setup for them, but it's something that they seem to be quite accustomed to at this point in time. So Jack Hodgson back out on track for another lap here. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, has leapfrogged him up into third position at 1 minute 9.6 with just under 10 minutes to go in this qualifying session, with it being a relatively short lap, a 1 minute lap. That should mean get around about 6, maybe 7 if you're looking at attempts at another fast lap, of course, depending on your qualifying stints and how you're running the session. There is some difference in that. It's not necessarily just a quick warm-up, do a fast lap and straight back in. It could be a warm-up, maybe even 2 warm-ups, followed by a short stint, especially in these touring cars, less so in the single-seaters. In touring cars, you can often 2, maybe 3 laps under your belt before the tyres want to give up, especially if you don't have to run these tyres in the racing afterwards to try and improve on your lap here. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers decide to negotiate this qualifying session. Willingless currently in the pit, set a quick purple sector in the sector 2 part of the track. It was a 35.6 for him on the last go around, and that is fairly well clear of the rest of the field, who seems to be in the mid 25.7, 25.750 for the likes of Alan Matthews, Jack Hodgson. So Willingless looking strong through that middle sector where you have those high-speed corners. There is too much variation really here at Donington Park. It's all just one big, very fast loop really, especially on this layout. Maybe less so if we were doing the full GP layout where you'd have the Fogartys and the Godards as well, but here on this loop layout it's all just about not carrying that much downforce really, and or maybe a little bit for the medium to high speed corners, but aside from that, just gunning it and getting your lines right and trying to beat the drivers around you. It's still Willingless with that 109.251 leading this session at this point in time. Not out on track as well. It feels like he's giving himself a little bit of a break as Jack Hodgson has a fairly substantial off there by the looks of things. It was a fairly decent wait to get back on track, and someone else who has done that is Guy Swarbrick. Sorry guys, your first appearance on stream of the year, and it was a Giulietta planted in the wall. He gets back on track though with no cars around him, so should be able to get underway relatively shortly. I didn't catch any damage that might have came your way, so not sure how it is looking for Guy in this qualifying session yet. He should be able to dive into the pit so and get a few more attempts under his belt. We're going to go on board with Andy Craker. Andy Craker, I should mention, looked very sharp. As apologies, it appears I don't have Andy's livery. I'll try and get that rectified in the interval between qualifying and the race. It looked to be that Andy was looking fairly sharpish in the qualifying for the first round of the single-seaters. Will he match that here in the touring cars? It's a purple sector 1, looking a little bit slower in sector 2, but as he comes down the Wheatcroft straight for one last time, it is not one last time at all. It is third place for Andy Craker now, 109.471, very close, in fact, very hot on heels of Matt Daly, so that will keep Matt Daly out on track for just that little bit longer than he would have wanted to potentially, in order to try and keep Andy Craker behind. It's looking stronger this lap, it should be said, into the 109.4s. The Delta's looking good as well, into the 109.3s now. This could be, is it going to be pole potentially for Matt Daly? It's going to be securing P2 if things stay this positive, but I'm sure he'd like to be challenging for that pole position as well. Still looking for an improvement at this point in time, although it's looking pretty much even, losing out on the first sector here. No personal best so far on this lap. We wait now as we come across the line, the sector timing line that is. That's a 25.7 as well, losing out ever so slightly down the middle sector as well. This is where Matt Daly's been strong so far, then absolutely nailing the brakes through the last part of the track, and it wasn't to be, unfortunately, on this lap. It is looking like he's gaining some time down the straight, but it's still a 109.441, the fastest time for Matt Daly. actually going to go back on board with Andy Craig for a brief moment, and the commentator's curse is striking well, it seems. It's always ruthlessly efficient in his commentator's curse. It was a very nice second one for Andy Craig, and unfortunately for him, running a little bit wide, heading through Coppines there, sees him off the track, and we'll have to get ready for another fast lap here at Donington. I just want to mention someone who is getting ready for another fast lap and is in fact about to be starting another fast lap. If he's not already on one, I don't think he is. He is not. It is Will Inglis. Will Inglis has got the hammer down now and will be trying to ensure that he secures that podium just that little bit more now. He's clear by about 0.2 of a second, a fairly decent margin given how tight the field is in this session so far, but I'm sure he wants to try and maybe break into the 109.1s if possible. So we'll stay with him for just a quick moment. Starting then this fast lap now with Will Inglis. First couple of corners relatively easy, so it seems, but Redgate can really catch you out. You carry quite a lot of speed down that straight, followed straight into one of the tighter corners on the track actually. And you see plenty of drivers washing out wide through turn one, have to rejoin around about Hollywood. And then of course if you've compromised that starter lap, you are suffering all the way at least down to McLean to credit curves, the old hairpin, all relying on the amount of speed that you're carrying early on. And these front-wheel drive cars, of course, naturally will want to potentially understeer a little bit unless you've got the set a little bit more on the nose, which makes the back end might squiggle like a Mito. But it is certainly a fine balance is navigating a fast car like WTCR round the first part of this lap. And Will Inglis has met that balance absolutely perfectly. His personal best through the first sector, 27.4, 25.9, losing out a little bit through that second sector, bouncing over the curbs as well. Clearly, cutting those curbs is making substantial amounts of time here for these drivers because they are trying their best to do so, even at the potential compromise of the lap later on. Now, currently on for a 109.3. A little bit late into that braking zone. It was a 109.8 on that last lap, so not what Will Inglis wants to be running at this point in time. He still holds that provisional pole, of course, so the job may well be done, but we wait to see what the likes of Andy Craig, Alan Matthews, Matt Daly can do in the dying breath of this session now. Still on board with Will Inglis at this point in time. Not looking like any improvements we found just yet. 49 seconds to go. So will he make it round? No, he won't make it round for another fast lap attempt here in the qualifying now. This will be his last lap. So how's it looking? It predicted a 109.2 potentially, so it's looking like he could just about edge out his previous best as Alan Matthews comes to second fastest in this session so far. 109.3. Matt Daly, has he got a response? I think he could well do, but we're going to wait here with Will Inglis at this point in time. Or no, in fact, no, tell a lie. We're going to jump on board with Matt Daly now as he's heading down towards Roberts. It's looking like a 109.27, a 2.2 potentially. Let's see how he navigates this final left-hander here and heads down the Wheatcroft straight. It is a 109.251 he needs to beat in order to take pole position in this session. It's just missing out here. It's a 109.278. Takes his spot in second position back once again, and Will Inglis in the end doesn't improve, settles for a 109.251. Matt Daly does actually have another fast lap in him, but I don't think he is pushing. In fact, he may well be pushing. No, he's not. Not pushing at this point in time is Matt Daly then, who is left to head around the track then. It is Alan Matthews, but he's looking a little bit slower than his previous best. In fact, make that a 106.7. I think we have some lag going on. I'm not sure if this is my end or someone else's end, because we're seeing Alan Matthews jump across the track. This very well could be my end. Let's see now, as we have Jack Hodson still to go. Just yet heading down into Roberts himself. Made some time in the first sector. Pretty average through the middle sector, it must be said. Let's see now as we head round that final left-hander for one more time here. And it is a 57-minute. No, it's not. I can't quite tell you what that last lap was, but it was still P5 in the end for Jack Hodson. Matt Daly settles for P2. So after all of that, Will Inglis takes pole here at Donington for round one of the 939 Corse AROC Touring Car Championship for the second half of this year. We'll catch you in just a few moments, getting ready for race one of this evening. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are just about ready to go, in fact, as we are lined up here at Donington. Will Inglis and Matt Daly on the front row. It's 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away. Now, if the drivers could please stop smoking the tyres, it would make my graphics card a little bit more, my temporary graphics card a little bit more happy with me. As we head into that first corner, flames on the overrun for Will Inglis. A good getaway, in fact, and here is Alan Matthews also with a good getaway. He's side by side with Matt Daly at this point in time, just about edging out, in fact, as we head down through to Hollywood. The Craner curves now, and it is a good start for Alan Matthews, but not quite the match, or will it be for Matt Daly? Matt Daly locking up here, really pushing along. Now here is Jack Hodson. Is that Jack Hodson? No, it's not. It's Andy Craker, actually. Andy Craker now wants to get in the mix as well. These drivers slowing each other down with all of this battling as we head towards the end of the lap already. Would you believe it? I love Donington. It is one of my favourites on the calendar. Such a short, quick lap. It's always action no matter where you are looking. All of this is like willingness to run away. What is going on further down the field? Well, I can tell you it's still willing bliss there, but it's Alan Matthews now has actually got ahead of Andy Craker and Matt Daly. Matt Daly dropping back to 4th as we go on board here with Anthony Gray. Anthony Gray on the heels of this mid-pack battle that is forming up. Now we have plenty of battling going on elsewhere in the field though, so let's have a look at Paul Brady. Paul Brady coming running in 7th with a fresh livery for his Giulietta, looking rather nice indeed. Matt Daly currently in 4th as we have some battling continuing on at the front end of the field. Now it's Alan Matthews in P2, 3.5 seconds down. Look at that gap already to willing bliss here. Were we nearly, I'll try that again, were we nearly 4 cars wide at some point? I think we were, but all the drivers making out unscathed there. It's now Matt Daly, Anthony Gray battling out here. Here's Barry Clayton in the mix as well. This could be a very exciting battle indeed. We've seen plenty of times. Barry Clayton certainly knows how to battle a touring car. So it is willing bliss, 4 seconds ahead now. Alan Matthews in P2. He's breaking away a little bit from Andy Craker and Matt Daly. Andy Craker is certainly going to have his work out for him, as we can see there on the Corse system. There is Matt Daly very much side by side with him now. Was in his blind spot. Now he can be very visible indeed. Oh, that is a big lockup. That's a big lockup. I'll try that again. A big lockup for Anthony Gray. Very unfortunate position to lock up there, because unlike some of the other parts of the track, like the crane and curves at Roberts, if you lock up, there is nowhere to hide. There is nowhere to quickly escape back onto the track. You've got to drop all the way down the field and wait for the rest of the cars to overtake. And that is what has happened, unfortunately, for Anthony Gray. His return to touring car racing, in race 1 at least, not gone the way that he would have wanted so far. Meanwhile, what's going else on track then? It is still Andy Craker in P3 at the moment. Matt Daly not too far behind. This battle, I feel like, it's going to be one of those which just kind of continues on, becomes a consistent dialogue throughout the story of race 1 here, as we have a small lockup for Alan Matthews out in front there. Great camera angle actually to see what was going on throughout the field. Andy Craker and Matt Daly now. Matt Daly having a brief look up the inside, taking the touring car line over the curves there, but well defended by Andy Craker there. Nothing that Matt Daly could have done from that far back. I do apologise about the slight choppiness of the stream, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have that resolved next week for the single-seater action by the next touring car action as well. Matt Daly there, as we saw in qualifying at a couple points in time, just so hooked in, heading through that final hairpin as he heads down the Wheatcroft straight once again. He's side by side with Andy Craker. Andy Craker looked very strong indeed through that middle sector. Looked like Matt Daly didn't quite have the recourse to do anything against him, but heading into that final hairpin on the, not hairpin at all, heading through the S's on the last part of that lap there, Matt Daly looked so much faster, and that set him up nicely for a move into turn 1, heading into Redgate there, late on the brakes, and was able to get ahead of Andy Craker. Now back into 3rd, the podium scoring positions for Matt Daly. Meanwhile, it is, who is that there? That is Steve Knight and Andy Brammer. Steve Knight clipping the back end of Andy Brammer. Perhaps Andy couldn't see him there and tried to move over. Didn't quite catch what happened there. We weren't at a decent enough camera angle for that, but that is a shame for Andrew Brammer. He was looking strong in last week's single-seater racing as well. Unfortunately, while I wasn't able to stream it owing to some National After Day clutch-related issue with my car, I was, in fact, able to have a quick look at the timing system to see what was going on. Yeah, quite an interesting weekend, shall we say, in terms of at least what the timing system showed me. So that'll be a shame for Andy Brammer. Likewise, Jack Hodson as well. He had a strong qualifying, as did Anthony Gray. In fact, we've had a few drivers who have had a strong running so far who've unfortunately dropped back further down the field, which should make for an interesting race here in race 1. Small lockup for Barry Clayton there. As we can see, these drivers are, it looks like, a lap down now. But yeah, this is looking very interesting indeed, because We've got some very fast cars further down the order. They should be able to push up later on. We have 20 minutes and a couple of decent overtaking opportunities here at Donington Park. It's always providing great action as Donington, so I'm sure we'll see the order change around somewhat. It is still low. 5 seconds between Willie Gliss and Alan Matthews. And after that, not much gap at all between the rest of the pack. Matt Daly has just posted a purple sector 2, trying to break away someone now from Andrew Craker behind and trying to catch back up to Alan Matthews. Now, in these touring cars, it's not quite like a single-seater, of course, where, as you, well, first of all, not like Formula 1, we have overtaking aid like DRS. We do have some overtaking aids on single-seaters, but it's not quite like DRS, not quite as cookie-cutter, cut and dry. Let's make the racing a little bit more exciting like DRS. It's a little bit more fun than that. But in touring cars you get none of that. You get less slipstream as well. Still some though to be had, but it won't be quite the vacuum effect that you might see from some other cars where you'll be able to follow a rival close behind and gain down the straight. Matt Daly's going to have to think smarter than that. There still might be a very small effect though, as he gets closer and closer to Alan Matthews, and as we've seen in the past from Matt Daly, he does like to run very close indeed there. Now just look at his steering wheel. He's looking a little bit like he's have to put in quite a large amount of front axle. That might just be a little bit of desync between his avatar in game and the front axle of the car there, but I would say that is more front axle load than he would like to put through in order to get the tyres to respond there. Are we starting to see about 8 to 10 minutes into this race? Are we starting to see the front tyres die off a little bit already? I have to say, usually don't seem to see the tyres completely disappear like we would in, say, the cars we were running for the first half of this year, where you would have different tyre strategies to play with. It seems to be a little bit more simple with the Giulietta TCR, although with this amount of power, this amount of downforce and front wheel drive, those front wheels will be working quite hard, so it's not too hard to imagine at all that the tyres will at least be getting hot, and that will be compromising the grip. Now, Matt Daly has not been able to catch up to the likes of Alan Matthews, as you can see here. Instead, he's under pressure now from Andy Craker as we head closer and closer to the midway stage of this race. But this, as I mentioned, might be the case where we see this battle now going on for quite some time. It seems to be that Matt Daly can't quite afford to push, whether it be with his tyres, his setup, for whatever reason, can't quite afford to push to P2 just yet. Still 16 minutes to go on the clock, a little bit more after that. Anything can happen out from just yet. We've seen it happen plenty of times late on in the race. One small error can cost people the victory or the like of a podium. So let's not count out Matt Daly just yet. But at the moment, his main focus, I imagine, will just be keeping the nose clean, keeping Andrew Craker behind as well. Elsewhere in the field, then we have a fairly close running between Guy Swarbrick and Rosie Oliver here. She's putting the pressure on. Of course, no longer do we have any AM Pro running. It's all just one big championship. That's a reflection on just how much the drivers have improved over the past couple of seasons here. And as we see, then some plenty of other close running actually as we have a look further down the pack. Once again, Steve Knight and Barry Clayton now battling out. I'm not sure what happened to Barry Clayton earlier on, but he was a little bit higher up. He's now fighting Steve Knight for P8 in the sponsor time. Is having a look up the inside there, door shut very harshly by Steve Knight there, but with like a bit of good and hard racing here. I think it might have been the camera angle as well, actually. I think that might have been a little bit more of a gap than what we saw on stream. Heading into Roberts there, a rear axle lockup for Barry Clayton. That's not the first rear axle lockup we've seen heading into Roberts there, and that's going to cost him big time in this race, just when he's rebuilt his momentum and was starting to maybe try and pick off some of the cars up in front. I mean, we had Guy Swarbrick and Rosie Oliver in the midst of a battle. They'll be slower. He just had Steve Knight to negotiate before he was behind them. Unfortunately for him, he's back down in P9 now with 5 seconds to make up once again. Speaking of Guy Swarbrick and Rosie Oliver, there's been a change in position, and that is a part of the track we do not want to be looking at too much because, as you saw there, ladies and gentlemen, the FPS was approximately 2. But as that is, Guy Swarbrick running rather wide there. Let's hope that he can rejoin, and I think he has been able to relatively quickly. Lamar Jackott and someone else who was quite quick in qualifying, currently running in P10, Rob Whitney. Not too far behind in P11 here. Good to see Rob Whitney back as we go on board with Guy apologies, Steve Knight just getting ahead of Guy Swarbrick using the inside line. A very nice overtake on the exit of the midsection. They're heading in to McLeod. We can see that there is Rosie Oliver now having broken it away from the likes of Guy Swarbrick. Steve Knight running rather nicely indeed. Rosie Oliver's car is quite confusing, but in a really nice way, because the livery is really vibrant, really nice. You look at it from the side and you think, great, but then you look at it from this angle and it's just a lime green car and you think, oh, who's that? I haven't seen that car before, because it looks totally different to any other angle. It's a really cool livery. I love the gradient effect on it, and just due to my lack of skills and or intelligence, completely catches me out sometimes when I look at that car from the rear angle. I did apologies to the drivers who are, speaking of liveries, we've already delved into livery talk. We're only 13 minutes in to our first race of the season. We're delving into livery talk. But I do apologise to the drivers who have got a slightly less than exciting livery with that plain white, or should I say, probably Bianca Spino or something like that, livery on their cars. That is owing to the fact that I did try to download the livery pack. However, Dropbox was having none of it and decided to give me a 0 blank file. That is not ideal. That doesn't tend to have much data in it at all. So no liveries for this evening's racing, but we will get rectified for the next touring car round. On board here with Alan Matthews. Matt Daly has broken away from Andy Craig now to the tune of about 2 seconds. That is owing to his fastest lap of the race so far, a 109.6, and Craig is a 109.7. Apologies, they were last laps. Andy Craig at a 109.5 and Matt Daly at 109.4, so actually the gap is still pretty much the same. And Alan Matthews, his best lap, a 109.5. But I feel that Alan Matthews is potentially taking too much out of the car at this stage in the race, because his last lap was a 110.0 on that last lap, whereas Matt Daly was in the 109.6 region. So Matt Daly on a bit of a charge here, and we are seeing that now heading down the Wheatcroft Straight. It's about a couple of tenths, make that pretty much nothing as we head into Redgate here. And diving over the curbs, in fact using a bit too much curb. Remember mentioning as we head into Hollywood, we mentioned that drivers can be lured into a false sense of security and run a little bit too wide and onto the dirt. That seems to have happened for Matt Daly now, as he drops back ever so slightly, but is strong through the later part of the lap, so we might see him catch back up. But all of this could be spurring Andy Craig on. All he has to do is watch and maybe think, well, let's just let these two battle and wear out their tyres and a bit of car. Maybe even an incident at some point in the race could be very beneficial indeed for Andy Craig. So he's still in a very good position here, outside of the podium positions, but he's still in with a very good shot. Is lapping a time that matches Matt Daly, in fact, a 109.3. So if these two slow down in the midst of battle, Andy Craig looking rather good here in this race. Speaking of someone who was looking rather good, someone we haven't had too much of a look at all really, was under pressure a little bit on lap 1, but since then has been looking rather comfortable indeed. It's Will Inglis with a 109.5 on that last lap, so good pace to be found here, and that was pretty much matching his best lap. If you look at his best lap there in the bottom left hand corner, it was 109.578 on that last lap, and 109.581, so good pace, good consistent pace here from Will Inglis. He's about 5 seconds clear of the rest of the pack now. Quite a comfortable margin that is not enjoyed elsewhere in the three-car battle that we have here going for P2. Maybe not quite a three-car battle just yet, but potentially not too far away. That was a very late lunge from Matt Daly, so late in fact the camera didn't actually have a chance to click over to watch it happening from outside. The only way we were able to watch it there was through the rearview mirror of Alan Matthews, and that was very close indeed. Had a look up and had a sniff up the inside there, but was not going to be able to get the move done. Was Matt Daly. Let's see now as we head down towards Roberts once again. It is a little bit further back than he would like to be, so he's going to be able to get that move done just yet. And I can't hear too much of these cars because all I can hear is the Boeing 747. That is the NVIDIA GT 1030 currently powering this stream. And it is making an almighty noise. It's doing its best, but just like these drivers are doing their best. Matt Daly, about 0.4 of a second at one point heading through that corner, but Alan Matthews, by the looks of things, seems to be very much in control here. Seems to have Matt Daly in the palm of his hands, really. Seems to be able to defend this P2 well. Some other changes of position here. Guy Schwarbrick, Barry Clayton, Andy Brammer and Rob Whitney in the midst of battle here. These do not have the cleanest of races so far for one reason or another, but they are still enjoying the racing action as we head down the Weekoff straight. They are exactly side by side here. As there's a puff of smoke from someone locking up in front of them. Rob Whitney, though, has the inside line there as we head through Redgate and should be able to secure that move. Does so and up into P12 for Rob Whitney. As we head down through the Craner curves, we see it is Andy Brammer having a brief look around the outside there. A lock up as he dives onto the brakes there, but is able to carry on without too many troubles, shall we say. The back end hasn't stepped out like we've seen for some other drivers, but there is Andy Brammer by no means relenting here. I should mention just out front, Alan Matthews has now dipped to within 5 seconds of winning this, so that is an almighty effort, not only defending from Matt Daly, but catching up to the race leader as well. Still, these two side by side then. This has been a great battle to watch so far on this lap as we head down towards Roberts. Oh dear, there is contact between the two drivers here. That is Andy Brammer and Rob Whitney. They were wiggling down the straights and that was only going to go one way. I should mention that didn't seem to cost anyone at all. It's slightly slower, but only to the tune of about 2 seconds compared to the cars around them. It was a 112 his best lap, Rob Whitney, 114. That was a rather fortunate spin out. That's yeah, I like it. Some Giulietta acrobatics. Strictly Come Donington here this evening, as we have more Strictly Come Donington. That is Andy Brammer going off with a flourish there. Goodbye, Andy Brammer. That is an 8 out of 10 from this judge here. That was an almighty drift. He had no hopes of catching that. No George Russell antics for Andy Brammer, unfortunately, this evening. If you caught that, by the way, in the Dutch Grand Prix, what a save that was. Unfortunately, Andy Brammer not able to catch it in the same manner. And the back end just stepping out here, doing its best Mito tribute. And Rob Whitney can breathe a little easier now, knowing that he won't be sent into the 12th dimension heading through Roberts anymore, and is able to lap quietly now. Someone who might not be able to lap quietly will be looking very tentatively, at least, in his rearview mirrors, because someone who is certainly not lapping quietly is Alan Matthews here. He has some traffic in the form of that rather unfortunate Andy Brammer now as he heads down towards Roberts once again and does get past with ease. Andy Brammer very courteous there, getting out of the way. Doesn't technically have to, but it's very nice to see him do that as we head through Roberts back onto the Weekoff straight once again. Alan Matthews is on a late race charge here, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of their pace at the moment. Let's not count out Matt Daly, by the way. He is very clearly in the mix, as you can see. One of my favourite, completeness side here, one of my favourite parts of any British track actually is that entry into Redgate, where you see the drivers diving over the pit exit line there in order to get the best entry into the corner here. But Alan Matthews, in terms of his current pace, well, he's just about keeping Matt Daly at base. This is why Matt Daly is very much in the mix here as well. But Alan Matthews is on for a 109.99. Right, again, 109.9 on that last lap, whereas on the last lap, Willis was in the 110 region. Best lap wise, it's a 109.3 compared to a 109.4. So Alan Matthews closing in little by little to winning this. We've got around about, in fact, pretty much 5 or 6 laps left in this race. Will it be enough to catch up to Willingless? I'm not sure if it will, but certainly he will get closer and closer. If there is a small error here or there, it will spell the end of Willingless's race winning hopes here, as we have Anthony Gray having an off. We just caught a glimpse of his rear wing, and it's at the entry into Roberts once again. It is proving to be a little bit difficult for some drivers here, potentially. Maybe brake balance setup a little bit off. Of course, in this early part of the season, the setups aren't quite as refined as they will be later on. The drivers, as they get more and more familiar with the car, although they do know this Giulietta very well indeed, will be able to absolutely nail the setup for certain tracks. Because, of course, as much as the drivers get more familiar with the cars, their driving styles may improve, may evolve as time progresses, and that slight change in driving style may necessitate a slight change to driving setup as well. Setup is a crucial part of this type of racing. These are finely owned racing machines, and they really do need any help in getting around the track, safely and in a nice manner as well, in a nice way to drive as possible. And Alan Matthews certainly does have a decent setup underneath him, because look at that gap now at 3.5 seconds. We don't quite have the capability to dive into the chat just yet, although that's something I am working on, trying to think of a way to negotiate that further with the drivers so as to not distract them as well. I imagine there will be some well, he's on mute, I can tell you. I can have a quick look at the comms, and I can tell you that Willing List is actually currently on mute, so the other drivers won't be able to hear any signs of exasperation from him as he's being hunted down by Alan Matthews and Matt Daly. That gap is actually extended ever so slightly, so maybe that won't come at all, really. In the Auto Italia liveried car there, Alan Matthews is potentially more focused on keeping Matt Daly at bay. Meanwhile, in the rest of the pack, we have a battle going on here between Rosie Oliver and Jack Hodson. The two siblings not racing under the same name anymore, but still fighting nonetheless as we head through the Craner curves now. It is Jack Hodson who's trying to get the upper hand on Rosie. In terms of qualifying, he certainly had the upper hand, but this race has gone very well indeed for Rosie, and as she's worked her way up to a top 6 finish, which certainly is to be commended. This is a good start to her championship fight, and this is one benefit of, I think, of getting rid of the Am and Pro format. It means that these drivers will have a chance to kind of shine in the full championship, so to speak, because yes, an AM driver may or may not have a little bit less pace compared to a pro driver, may be less comfortable in the car, but if they're here consistently week in and week out, and they do have that odd race where they shine through, where I'm not saying it's an odd race, but as it stands, it's a good start to the season for Rosie. It means that driver will be able to show what they're made of and put in a good showing in the championship standings. You know, someone who is putting in a good showing here is Willing List. Willing List has responded to that charge from behind, and that gap has now built up to around about 4.5 seconds. I say that gap has responded. His laps, actually, looking at his previous couple of laps, have been pretty much equal in terms of consistency, a 110.0 on plenty of his previous laps now, whereas Alan Matthews and Matt Daly have slowed down somewhat. They have been on an absolute charge for so long in this race now, and I think the tyres, maybe even drive exhaust, starting to set in now as the back end stepping out on the exit of Roberts there. Alan Matthews well caught there, the back end twitching, but that's going to cost him momentum as we head down the Wheatcroft straight once again. Matt Daly now having a look around the outside here. Not too often you see that done at Redgate, but will it work here? I think it will. Matt Daly up into P2. Fantastic move there, and that rather has scuppered Alan Matthews' chances here in this race. Matt Daly now into second position in this race. At one point it looked inevitable given his pace, but then Alan Matthews certainly put up a good fight and has done so for quite long in this race. But have we seen the end of Alan Matthews' charge? It could just be the case. Only 1 minute to go in this race, plus another lap, just in case you have forgotten there. But yeah, the back end, unfortunately, for Alan Matthews, costing him in this race. Still in with a very secure shout of the podium here. They are clear of Andy Craker by about 17 seconds. Field is just about spreading out apart from these two drivers here. Matt Daly is going to have to try with everything he has got to ensure he keeps P2 away from a very expectant Alan Matthews here, who's going to have a look, in fact, around the outside, going to try and replicate that move that Matt Daly pulled off so beautifully just one lap ago, but well defended by Matt Daly. It's getting oh so close there. There might have even been contact between the two. Going around the long way then did work briefly for Alan Matthews. Got a nose out in front, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately, for him, and he has to settle for P3 once again. I imagine there's going to be more and more attempts from Alan Matthews later into this race. We are currently on the penultimate lap of this race. Where are we? We are heading through into McLean's in just a moment's time with Will Inglis. And it has been a great start to the season for him. A continuation of form, really, from the first half of this year's running. It's Will Inglis who leads this race. On board then with Matt Daly. Matt Daly still very much under pressure from Alan Matthews here. I always do this when it's a fight between Alan Matthews and Matt Daly. I always accidentally call Alan Matthews Matt Daly because his initials are Matt on the screen. I always do it. As we see that Giulietta in its now quite familiar position up on two wheels as we get ready to start the final lap of this race with these two drivers now. We're going to go on board though with Will Inglis. That was a lock-up. I can't work out who that was a lock-up from. That looks to be a lock-up from... potentially that was Rob Whitney there. A slight lock-up, was able to carry on though. Will Inglis gets past with ease as well. Matt Daly now starting to break away somewhat from Alan Matthews behind as we head down towards the final few corners of this race. Now, would you believe it? Luckily, though, we do still have another race to go. And it has been a great drive from Will Inglis. He's made it look easy, has had nothing in the forms of any type of challenge, really, in this race. After lap one, he got away well, was able to fight off the likes of Alan Matthews, Andy Craker, Matt Daly with ease. Has had potentially some pressure midway through the race, but has responded to it well. Dives over the curbs for one last time in race one, heading down that Wycroft straight. It's going to be a very celebratory Will Inglis here. He takes victory here in race one at Donington, his first race of the season, and it goes to Will Inglis there. Fantastic drive as we have Matt Daly now crossing line, does eventually take P2 ahead of Alan Matthews. A great drive from him as well. And now we watch now as Andy Craker heads around Roberts for one last time here. Back onto the loud pedal and takes home P4. Great drive from Andy. As we have Paul Brady as well. A bit of a quiet race for Paul Brady. We saw him every now and again. Apologies, we didn't really see too much from Paul, but he had a strong drive here to take away P5. Likewise, Rosie Oliver, another strong drive here to take away P6 and keep her sibling Jack Hodson at bay for P7 in the end for him. I have a feeling that Paul Brady might not have had much fuel in his car by the looks of things there, but it is Barry Clayton coming home at P8 then. Guy Swarbrick will come home P9, Stephen Knight P10, Rob Whitney P11, Paul Brady, apologies, Andy Bramber P12 and Anthony Gray P13. He was in the pits for a little while in this race, I believe. A victory in lap, well, not quite a victory in lap, but a celebratory in lap for Alan Matthews and Matt Daly there, as we have a proper victory in lap for Will Inglis as we get ready for race 2 coming up in just a few moments' time, so don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the grid, ladies and gentlemen. Ready for race 2 now, the reverse grid race here at Donington. As we already saw in race 1, plenty of overtaking opportunities here, so a bit of reverse grid action mixing up those drivers should provide some brilliant racing. Now it is Jack Hodson and Rosie Oliver lining up on the front row of the grid. Andy Brammer and Andy Craker on row 2. Then we have Alan Matthews, Matt Daly, Will Inglis. Actually, have we swapped grid format? We may have swapped grid format. It may be the top 10. Or my memory is failing me. Either way, it is now 6 red lights on the gantry. Our drunken cameraman is waiting for the cars to head towards him. And, yep, he's very much drunk as we head now through that first corner. Good launch, actually, for Jack Hodson. He should have little in the form of challenges as we head through that first corner. Meanwhile, we have someone running a little bit wider. That is Andy Craker off the track, and we have a few cars stopped, I believe. Oh no, that is just my eyes. Ignore me. But not a great start to the race for Andy Craker there. Rosie Oliver, another good starter here, is about half a second clear of Matt Daly. Matt Daly has worked his way up through the field, well up into P3 already. How long will Rosie be able to defend here? Will Inglis as well, our race winner from race 1, working his way up to the top end. Alan Matthews, a protagonist of race 1, of course, running so well. Oh dear, we have quite a few cars off now. There's Rob Whitney, Andy Brammer, Anthony Gray, Guy Swarbrick, Alan Matthews, all off track here. This is certainly going to turn this race on its head now, as we have Matt Daly up into P2, Rosie in P3, Will Inglis P4, then we have Paul Brady P5, Barry Clayton P6, Steve Knight P7, and Andy Craker, someone who was further down the order in turn 1 rather, now finds himself up in P8. So this is really going to be a difficult race for some of those drivers who've had those unfortunate events at the start of race 2 here. Let's see now, Jack Hodson still leading this race. Jack Hodson, I expect, should be able to put up a little bit of a fight against Matt Daly here, although not that anyone really can. It's Matt Daly's an unstoppable force. If you put him behind the wheel of an Alfa Romeo, move, basically. But these drivers will try their best. I'd love to see how quickly he'd be able to overtake me. Probably really rather quite quickly. Matt Daly then 7/10 behind as he is hunting him down. Now this will be our first true lap, our first ideal, our first kind of representative lap time on the board here for race 2. Of course, so the cars will have a bit of a fuel load on, given that so much of this lap is at wide open throttle. And we have 25 minutes and then some of running to complete. There is a decent fuel match to consider. That will, of course, tumble down as the tyres get older as well. So we expect that the first fast lap is generally quite representative, and there should be an improvement at the middle stage of the race before things start turning towards the 110s once again. And we're seeing confirmation of that. Not the 110s as in what Scousers like to wear on the shoes. As in 110s as in the lap time. But it's a 110.1. For Jack Hodson and a 110.0 for Matt Daly. So they are neck and neck. Jack Hodson putting up a fairly strong defence here, working well so far, keeping Matt Daly at bay. Rosie Oliver up in P3 at this point in time, has race winner from race 1. Will Inglis just behind her for company now. So what may have been, after her battle with Guy Swarbrick, a slightly more dull race. Well, I say Guy Swarbrick, she had Jack Hodson for company as well. It's certainly not going to feel that way here in race 2. The stakes oh so much higher now as we head into the final part of the lap now. Heading down the Wheatcroft straight then, it is Jack Hodson who stays in front of Matt Daly. But look at how small that gap is now, ladies and gentlemen. Will Inglis has got past Rosie Hodson. But the same cannot be said for Matt Daly on, Rosie Oliver. The same cannot be said on Matt Daly on Jack Hodson now, as he has a look up the inside here. Will he make it stick though? Jack Hodson seemed to try and push it round the outside here, but maybe a little bit too much, clipping some of the grass, and that seemed to upset the car ever so slightly, and it's now Matt Daly in the lead of this race. This is potentially the perfect situation for Matt Daly here. We saw at certain stages in race 1, he was closing in on Will Inglis, but wasn't quite able to get that move done in the end. For whatever reason, potentially more focus on the battle that Alan Matthews was giving him as well. But Jack Hodson is not going to relent, is not going to just allow Will Inglis to swoop past and start battling Matt Daly for the sake of Will Inglis's point score. No, of course not. Jack Hodson is going to try and keep Will Inglis behind in order to get that P2 in this race, which is going to massively compromise Will Inglis's race. His hopes for a double victory here this weekend lie on how quickly he can get past Jack Hodson and start fighting Matt Daly. And as it stands at this point in time, he isn't able to do so. Matt Daly should now just focus on getting his head down, setting those quick laps, getting Jack Hodson out of his rearview mirror, and then that race win will look ever so more likely. I don't know why I'm offering this advice, because if I was at Matt Daly, I wouldn't take advice off Reeve Taylor in terms of how to do some racing. He clearly knows far more than me, but it is 1.2 seconds now, that gap between Jack Hodson and Matt Daly, so maybe he was listening, because this is exactly what he needs to do. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson is not going to relent easily. He's going to keep Will Inglis behind him for as long as possible. Might be able to do it in terms of pace at the moment. Let's have a look at their best lap so far. It's a 109.991 and a 110.1 for Will and Jack respectively. So at this point in time, Will has the upper hand. Has had a look up the inside at Roberts here, was a little bit too far back to make anything stick though, so he's going to wait to try once again here down the Wheatcroft straight heading into Redgate. Two seconds that gap between Matt Daly and Jack Hodson now. This is looking stronger and stronger for Matt Daly. Not looking quite as strong though for Will Inglis. One small little error there. The error that we've talked about on a couple of occasions now this evening, that false sense of security that Redgate lures you into, or maybe I think it might be the fact that Hollywood is so wide and the crater curves there. You think, I can push the car a little bit more, and lo and behold, you end up on the grass. That has just happened for Will Inglis here. It means he drops back off the back of Jack Hodson, and Rosie Oliver has a little bit of a closer reference to the pace that she'd like to be running out in front here. She's running a very good race indeed at this point in time. Last lap at 110.8, best lap at 110.1, matching the cars in P2, and only a couple tenths off Will Inglis as well. She is one of the strongest cars on the grid at this point in time in terms of pace. Really nice race could be forming up for Rosie Oliver here, and this will bode well for the championship standings. We will, of course, have I'd say we have a brief look at them. But that will just be the race standings, of course, from race 1. So we may leave that for next weekend, of course. Of course, this will be well, let's say you won't get it quicker probably, but of course we will of course be highlighting the start of the season in the next issue of Alfa Romeo Driver. In the sim racing column, we'll have a quick look at how race 1 is shaping up and how that is what that's going to mean rather for the season that we have ahead of us. We'll look back as well. Want to have a bit more of an introspective look at kind of how the touring car action not only went for the first half of this year, but for the last time around the Juliettas as well. See how the drivers are shaping up against each other. Maybe a bit of predictions going on. Who knows? Either way, it's looking good for the drivers at the top end here, as you might expect. But Rosie Oliver has dropped back ever so slightly off the likes of Will Inglis and Jack Hodson. But Jack Hodson is now looking like he's very much under pressure here. Matt Daly is off into the sunset as far as he is concerned, because Will Inglis is now fighting with all his might to get past Jack Hodson and try and see if he can set those low 109s like Matt Daly has said. He's just set a 109.1. I thought maybe we could get into the 109.0s, 108s potentially in a race 1. That wasn't to be in the end, and Jack Hodson does run a little bit wide heading into Redgate. That is going to cost him dearly here as Will Inglis now jumps into P2. He can focus on hunting down Matt Daly. Matt Daly probably not too pleased with that sight as well, because Jack Hodson with his pace could have kept Will Inglis behind for quite some time. And now that sibling rivalry that we saw in race 1 continues on in race 2. As Anthony Gray, difficult weekend for him so far. What a shame to see him back so far this evening, but unfortunately this weekend not going the way that he would have wanted. I'm sure though that the further racing he'll be able to crack on and get some decent results as well. I saw he actually, before he you'd like to post something about the new 33 Starlight, which is, I think, what we should commemorate this. This stream is really in, not commemoration, but shall we say, in reverence to the 33 Starlight and its beauty. And I think Anthony Gray was agreeing with me on social media before, as we have. There's had a bit of a bumpy approach to the Roberts S's there. It was Andy Craker here who was up on 2 wheels, making sure that he is in the gallery of Giuliettas up on 2 wheels. Very important part of our media there to have your Giulietta with its door handles on the tarmac. Back and ball with Andy Craker then, actually, because he is looking like he's hunting down Barry Clayton really rather well. If we compare their pace at the moment, it's a 1:10.0 for Andy Craker, Barry Clayton 1:10.3. Best laps is in Andy Craker's favour as well. It's a 1:09.8 compared to Barry Clayton's 1:10.0. Seeing a few cars now actually in that 1:10.0 range in terms of the outright fastest lap, so good consistency throughout the field here. Speaking of throughout the field, let's have a look at what's going on elsewhere in the field. A decent race for Paul Brady in race 1. It's looking like it could be another decent one here. He'd like to be keeping Alan Matthews at bay, I'm sure, though, after a great race in race 1. There's contact between Paul Brady and Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews did have a look up at the inside, was alongside, and I don't think Paul Brady was potentially not expecting it. And that has meant contact. Alan Matthews drops back now, still in P8. Paul Brady remains in P7. That is a shame for Alan Matthews, though. What a turnaround in fortunes for Alan Matthews, battling with Matt Daly, potentially catching up to Willingless in race 1, and at the moment settling for P8. We still have over half race distance. We still see what he can do in the later stage of this race. Meanwhile, the battle between Jack Hodson and Willingless is forming up, which is not something I expected to say. Jack Hodson has found a bit of pace by the looks of things. It's a 1:09.6 on that previous lap. That was his best lap of the race so far. Second best only to Matt Daly's 1:09.1. And he's absolutely flying on this lap as well. Personal best through Sector 1. Purple 25.6, second Sector 2 here. And as he crosses the line to start another lap here, Willingless responds to the charge from behind and keeps Jack Hodson at bay. But for Jack Hodson, that was a new fastest lap. A 1:09.38 sees his new personal best, getting oh so close now to Matt Daly. At this stage in the race, if you are Jack Hodson, you'd be trying to say to Willingless, come on, let's work together. Not that Willingless will be already discovered. Doesn't appear to have his microphone on at this point in time, but wouldn't you be saying, come on, let's work together, let's try and let's swap around for now. You can follow me and we'll push back towards Matt Daly. Maybe that's just a bit too much of my endurance racing mindset beginning to kick in there. But yeah, Jack Hodson certainly has the pace to at least challenge Matt Daly at this stage of the race. Matt Daly's into the higher 1:09s with Jack having a bit of a spring in his step all of a sudden. Meanwhile, we're enjoying some battling between Rob Whinney and Guy Swarbrick now as we head down through towards the latter part of the lap. Heading through to McLean's in just a moment's time. And we see a good defence here from Rob Whinney. Rob Whinney has always been strong on the defence, actually. And we're seeing that here once again as we head now down towards Roberts. Guy Swarbrick echoing his every move, then trying to gain as much as possible in terms of a slipstream with these Giuliettas as we head now into Roberts. Roberts catching a couple of drivers out in race 1. I don't think we've seen quite as much of that in race 2 so far. I might have missed one here or there, so apologies if I have. But the drivers potentially learning from their mistakes now. Now quite happy with how the car is going to behave heading into Roberts at all stages of the tyre life. Because yeah, it certainly looks to be that once that back end is stepping out in terms of lockup, but maybe even just in general, as we saw towards the end of race 2 with Andy Brammer, once the back end steps out, it's kind of pretty much you're just a passenger at that point. So good to see that the drivers able to work their way around that here in race 2. Meanwhile, though, Rosie Oliver and Barry Clayton seem to be enjoying a bit of a battle here. as we have potentially a three-way battle heading into Roberts now, as we jump on to the week-off straight. Once again, it is going to be Rosie Oliver on the defence as Barry Clayton has a look around the outside here. Seems to have a good run down the straight, actually. This might be relatively easily, although it's never easy to just jump it around the outside here. And Rosie Oliver is late on the brakes. And well defended by Rosie. Has she left the door open though heading into Hollywood? I think she could have compromised the run through the second corner in making sure that Barry Clayton was behind in the first. Barry Clayton says thank you very much, takes that wide open corner and up into fourth for Barry Clayton. Rosie Oliver then in fifth at the moment, now with Andy Craker for company as well. Andy Craker is, I'm sure, much more pleased with how this race is going compared to race one. Oh dear, that is contact between Andy Craker and Rosie Oliver. Looks to be, it could be a relatively easy recovery, and it is, thankfully for her. She's able to get underway once again. That is a very unfortunate little accident that happened there, of course, with the track being so narrow and the speeds being so high. You always see that type of accident at Donington because the stakes are just so high. But Rosie Oliver, while I'm sure she's not quite as happy as she once was, say, in race one, in lap one, lap two, where she was challenging for the lead, I'm sure she's still fairly happy to at least be matching her position in race one. Meanwhile, Matt Daly has clearly seen what's going on behind him, responded to that, and has now started setting some fairly quick lap times here. It's a 1:09.3 on that last lap for Matt Daly. The gap between P1 and P2 now standing at about 6.5 seconds. This could well be why the battle going on between these two is going to be slowing them down as we head into the later stage of the lap. Now 13 laps into this race already, and Winningless and Jack Cotton have shown no signs of relenting in terms of their battling. As we head into Roberts now, a little bit of airtime for Winningless, but just judged that perfectly. I would say didn't compromise his run out of the corner by doing that much at all, really, and a little bit of a faster lap on that previous lap for Winningless in comparison to Jack Hodson, so the gap does build a little bit more now. But let's have a look at Paul Brady. Paul Brady, we didn't get to see too much of him in race one, and that is commentator's curse if ever I have seen it. We've seen Paul Brady and Alan Matthews actually having come together at that very corner before, and it's happened once again there. I'm not quite sure what to make of that one, but it is Alan Matthews in P7, Paul Brady P8. And yeah, what a shame. Their races both compromised by that type of incident, really, as now we have Paul Brady, who had a quiet but strong race in race one, as he has become a bit accustomed to, really. Is he retiring? I think Paul Brady may be retiring from this race, which would be a great shame. There still some points could have been on the board there. Yes, he is retiring, unfortunately. So that is Paul Brady and Anthony Gray now out of this evening's running. That promotes Guy Strawbrick up into 8th position here, under pressure from Steve Knight. Rob Whitney not too far behind as well. This could be a very good battle forming up. Don't count Andrew Brammer out of this as well. Towards the end of this race, we could have quite the battle on our hands, as Winningless has been able to just about increase his lead ever so slightly to over a second now between him and Jack Hodgson's looking a little bit more comfortable between these two cars. Paul Brady is able to jump back in, which is good to see, so still get some running underway. Maybe he could have been technical issue, could have been he just decided he need to reset this car. This car's no longer going to be a good race car, which fair enough, if the race is already ruined, then why not quickly exit, rejoin, have a fresh car, and get some practice in, get a bit more familiar with the car, get a bit more familiar with the track, ready for later races in the season. Well, I believe Jack Cotton may have had a bit of an issue on this lap, because that gap has increased substantially. Yes, he has. Look there, 1:12 predicted on this lap. That means he'd ideally not want to keep this pace up, because quietly in the background, as we saw him battling Rosie Oliver before, as I say, that's a near instant heading into Roberts, Barry Clayton has been running a very quick race here, has worked his way up through the field, was very far down on lap 1, if you remember, but now finds himself in P4. Now, if we keep this current pace up, which is was a little bit compromised heading through that final corner there, but we're looking at around about a 110, high 109. That's could be what Jack Hodson seems to be a little bit quick at this point in time, but could be what he is running. So I don't count Barry Clayton out yet. Still some good points on the board for him. Likewise, Andy Craker and Rosie Hodson as well. Rosie Hodson can, while I'm sure she's, sorry, Rosie Oliver, while I'm sure she's not quite as happy with the lost points, or the potential lost points on offer through dropping back in this reverse grid race, she's still in P6, the same position as she was in race 1, and that'll still be a good haul of points. And more importantly, perhaps, she can now rest a little bit easier. She's not quite under the same stresses that she was early on in this race. She has a 10-second gap down to Alan Matthews behind. We have 5 minutes to go, make that around about 6 laps in this race. And will Alan Matthews be able to make up 10 seconds in 6 laps? That'll be an almighty feat if Rosie doesn't make any errors into the later stages of this race. So a good race all around still for Rosie Hodson. Let's not forget, she certainly didn't make it easy for those drivers at the front end of the field. So that will be a good confidence boost, a good driving force behind hopefully the rest of her season. As we go on board now with Guy Swarbrick. Guy Swarbrick has been clearly putting on a pretty decent defence here, because we have a three-way battle. There is Paul Brady. Paul Brady's pretty much out of the running, unfortunately, with him being a lap down now. It's Guy Swarbrick, Steve Knight and Rob Whitney, all relatively close to each other now. So still could be a bit of excitement going on even at this end of the field later into this race. In fact, Guy Swarbrick, Steve Knight are the 2 closest cars on track at this point in time. Let's get now through the Craner curves here. Very elegant, isn't it? We're going to jump into livery talk once again. The OP Oils black livery on Guy Swarbrick's car is really quite elegant. That nice fade into the checkered flag on the back there. You can often kind of forget that it's there, but it does look very nice indeed. As we have Steve Knight. Steve Knight now putting the pressure on Guy Swarbrick here. Will Guy Swarbrick run a little bit wide? He has, but as has Paul Brady. That allows Steve Knight to just run on by, really, and take P8 in this race. A nice, simple overtake for Steve Knight at this stage in the race. Guy Swarbrick, I'm sure, kicking himself from the cockpit. I'm not sure what's going on in terms of Guy Swarbrick's setup, if he's back on his VR. I know he, too, is... at one point, was struggling with a lack of frame rate due to one reason or another. I'm not sure if he's on a monitor or his laptop, or is back on his trusty VR setup. We do have a breadth of setup choices here in the AROC Racing Leads. I mean, as we see this battle now, contact between Steve Knight and Guy Swarbrick, luckily was able to recover and get back on track very quickly. Indeed, that could have been costly in his race. Now has Rob Whitney for company as well. But yeah, we have Guy Swarbrick on the VR. We have a few drivers on a more normal setup, shall we say, and then we also have the likes of Colin Peace, Matt Daly on a bit more of a serious setup, I believe. But then we also have the likes of Alex Smith in the Signal Caesars, infamously on the PS5 controller. I believe he brought it to National Alpha Day, if I am not mistaken. I so wish I was there. It was honestly gutted to miss it. Genuinely for not being on the sim truck as well, as much as it would have been nice to have seen the cars and do the parade lap in the Mito if it would have worked, which as we found out it wouldn't have. Yeah, gutted to have not been part of some more racing action. But yeah, I believe Alex Smith brought brought his trusty controller with him, if I'm not mistaken. Which, yeah, Alex Smith does all of those mighty qualifying laps and those great races on controller, which is not something you see every day. I'm not necessarily going to say not something you see every day, but it certainly isn't every day, but it's not exactly uncommon. Matt Daly leading this race. We haven't seen too much of him in the past few minutes, the past few laps. That's because he's been leading a nice, simple, quiet race here. Doesn't need to push too hard, just needs to bring the car home. Now we have just over a minute to go, so this would be, I'd say, about 3 more laps in this race. As things stand, it's been a nice drive for him so far.
as we see there, Matt Daly heading into Roberts once again. We're looking just a little bit further up the road, although a lap down. Guy Swarbrick having a look up the inside. Steve Knight here, well defended by Steve Knight. Not too much that Guy Swarbrick could do from that position. Don't count Rob Whitney out here. He is lapping, waiting, I think, to see if anything goes on between the two cars up in front of them. They've already had a little bit of a squabble once in this race already. Will it happen once again? We will find out in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. The brake disc going red hot ever so briefly there as Guy Swarbrick taps the brakes to make sure he makes it around cleanly. And we get towards the end of the lap. Once again, I love Donington. It's a true roller coaster, not only in terms of the excitement, but the elevation changes as well. They are really all over the place. And it must feel even more inside the car. But Rob Whitney moving up the inside there, late on the brakes. Fantastic effort from Rob Whitney up into 9th position now. Great drive from him. Well, this battling has actually allowed C-Line to break away somewhat. Guys probably might be thinking about another look around the outside, potentially to Roberts. Not one I can say I'm all too familiar with, but he gave it a look nonetheless, as we are now on the penultimate lap of this race and are about to start the final lap as well, as Matt Daly is very much onto the typical Giulietta WTCR pose there, up onto two wheels at a 45-degree angle as he starts the final lap of this race. So all the action is happening further down the field as Rob Whitney clears Guy Swarbrick now and starts to hunt down Steve Knight. He has not too long at all left in this race. Will he be able to make a move? We will find out in just a moment's time now as we watch Matt Daly just behind them in terms of where he is on the road, exiting the craning curves and heading through to the final couple of corners. It has been a strong drive from Matt Daly, arguably stronger than race 1. Was able to get past his colleagues earlier on in the race, and since then has led a nice, quiet, simple race, which is what you need to start off your championship charge. This means that Matt Daly will be on equal points at the end of this round there. So what an exciting start to the championship it should be. Running now down towards Roberts for one final time. Will we see the same angle? I do hope so. It's very exciting indeed. And more importantly, the return of the victory donuts. Come on, Matt, don't let us down now as we head around the Roberts for one last time. Down onto the Wheatcroft straight, weaving in celebration. It is Matt Daly who takes the race to victory. Well done, Matt. There. Very strong drive indeed. And a little wiggle for celebration as well. We're watching now, flashing the headlights. Winnigliss comes home to take P2 as well. Jack Hodson, in just a moment's time, will be rounding out the podium with a P3. A strong showing from Jack there as well. Small lockup for Barry Clayton. Really strong race from him actually. Worked his way up through the field. Well, nice quiet race, but just put in the effort and has been rewarded with decent points here. Takes home P4. Likewise, Andy Craker, good strong drive, good strong points as well. And matching her race 1 effort, Rosie Oliver takes home P6. Good effort, Rosie, especially early on in the race with those exciting battling at the lead. At the front end of the pack. Alan Matthews comes home P7. A good recovery given how the race started for him, with that catastrophic lap 1 incident towards the end of the lap there, as we have Steve Knight worked his way past Rob Whitney, Guy Swarbrick to come home P8 in the end. Been a nice drive for him as well, and he takes 8th in this race. And there we have Rob Whitney will be coming home P9, and rounding out the top 10 it is Guy Swarbrick, Andy Brammer and Paul Grady to conclude this evening's running, as we have a bit of a victory weave heading into the pit entry for Matt Daly there. There's a new one for us. And that will conclude this evening's running here at Donington Park. What a good way to start this season. Oh no, what's Willingliss doing? Oh, he's cracked. That's rude. I've just polished this for the new season. You just go right in and crash the... I say I've just polished it. I thought I had a look at the entry list. I thought I was getting a Giulietta camera car, but I've been not laden with the 75. I like the 75, but I might need the Giulietta now because Willingliss has just crashed into my camera car. Either way, that concludes the first race of this season. I think Rosie's done the same as well, because Willingliss finished off the front end of it, and Rosie's decided that the back of the car needed some restyling as well. But that concludes the first round of this season's touring car action. Hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I've enjoyed commentating. We'll catch you in a fortnight's time for round 2, and next week for some more single-seater action. Thank you very much, and good night.